All right. Sorry to keep you waiting. We're doing an earlier episode today for family reasons, so thank you for accommodating me. This is the mop-up for January 25th, 2025. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me. On Wednesday, Donald Trump ordered the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division to freeze all ongoing activity for 90 days, including any new consent decrees with local police departments over use of deadly force. Trump's Department of Justice added it will reconsider December's consent decree with Louisville, Kentucky's police department after a 4-year investigation into the shooting death of Breonna Taylor resulted in a judge demanding major reforms in the Louisville, Kentucky Police Department. The Trump administration now signaling the Department of Justice's Civil Rights Division will no longer be in the business of policing the police. And those consent decrees are going to be left to just dangle in the breeze. But Louisville, Kentucky Mayor Craig Greenberg is now saying his city will honor the consent decree no matter what Trump's Department of Justice decides. Mayor Greenberg said, quote, regardless of what happens in federal court, the Louisville Metro government and the Louisville Metro Police Department will move forward and honor our commitment to meaningful improvements and reform. The Minneapolis City Council agreed to a consent decree on January 6th this year, following a months-long Justice Department investigation into Minneapolis police using the types of excessive force that resulted in the murder of George Floyd back in 2020. That consent decree, according to the new Trump Department of Justice, is no longer going to be enforced, but Minneapolis Mayor Jacob Frey telling CNN, quote, it's unfortunate that the Trump administration may not be interested in cooperating with us to improve policing and support our community. But make no mistake, we have the tools, the resolve, and the community's backing to fulfill our promise to the people of Minneapolis. Our work will not stop. Donald Trump yesterday visited parts of western North Carolina hit by Hurricane Helene, which smacked into parts of Florida as a Category 4 back in September. After surveying the damage and talking to residents, Trump told reporters we should get rid of FEMA and leave disaster relief up to the states. Yeah, that'll work out. Yeah, good idea. Punchbowl reporting this morning that during last weekend's retreat for Democratic lawmakers, Congressman Jamie Raskin, the ranking member on the House Judiciary Committee, Jamie Raskin interviewed 2 social psychologists in front of Democratic lawmakers to help them deal with the authoritarian language now being deployed by their Republican colleagues. The 2 psychologists, according to Punchbowl, recommended that Democrats not fight Republicans in the gutter, something we've been witnessing between Democrats and Republicans, especially in the House Oversight Committee. Well, it makes for great sound bites when Jasmine Crockett puts Nancy Mace, Lauren Boebert, and Marjorie Taylor Greene in their place. The psychologists are saying it may not be the most effective way to defeat fascism. That's according to the psychologists. What do you think? Leave a comment. I love Jasmine Crockett. Democratic Congressman Ted Lieu from California yesterday, he's been on this show. Ted Lieu responded to Donald Trump's executive order that will begin the process of eliminating birthright citizenship. He said, he called this executive order, quote, un-American, unconstitutional, ludicrous, and impossible to enforce. You should listen to what he said. It will be impossible for people to prove that they were born in the United States. You'd have to be carrying your birth certificate with you and your parents' birth certificate because nobody writes down whether or not you're an American citizen on your birth certificate. So you'd have to carry your parents' birth certificate if you can find it. It's unenforceable. U.S. District Judge in Seattle, John C. Kognauer, on Thursday blocked Trump's executive order eliminating birthright citizenship, calling it blatantly unconstitutional. In his order, the judge wrote, "There are other times in world history when we look back and people of goodwill say, quote, where were the judges? Where were the lawyers?" That's what we're asking right now. Where were the judges? Where were the lawyers? How did this happen? Well, too many of them here in America, Your Honor, were either aiding and abetting fascism or turning a blind eye to it. Certainly not this judge, but the 6-3 majority on the Supreme Court, certainly. When Trump signed this order to begin the process of eliminating birthright citizenship, he said, quote, "As you know, we're the only country that does this." He added, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. As you know, we're the only country that does this. As you know, Donald Trump is both stupid and a liar. Birthright citizenship is granted to anyone born inside Canada, Mexico, Brazil, Venezuela, Colombia, Chile, Peru. There are 29 countries besides ours that provide birthright citizenship, as you know. Salon reporting Trump's Justice Department, while making its case before that Seattle judge to uphold Trump's executive order eliminating birthright citizenship, when they argued before the judge, Trump's Justice Department said, you know, our reading of the 14th Amendment suggests Native Americans may not be citizens. In a memo on Thursday, 11 state attorneys general warned the Department of Homeland Security they will sue Donald Trump over any ICE raids that take place in sanctuary cities. The attorneys general signing the memo are from California, New York, Colorado, Connecticut, Hawaii, Illinois, Maryland, Massachusetts, New Mexico, Rhode Island, and Vermont. Not signing this memo is the state attorney general for New Jersey. And that's important because ICE detained United States citizens after a workplace raid in Newark, New Jersey on Thursday. One of those citizens detained by ICE is a veteran who just happens to be Hispanic because he's Puerto Rican, which means he's a U.S. citizen. ICE detaining a Puerto Rican United States veteran because he wasn't carrying proof of citizenship. If you're Puerto Rican, in Trump world, you're supposed to carry a passport and copies of both your parents' birth certificates to prove you're a United States citizen. As I said, the arrest took place in Newark, New Jersey, and that city's mayor, Ross Baraka, says ICE took United States citizens into custody without a warrant. Mayor Baraka said, quote unquote, in plain violation of our Fourth Amendment. CBS reporting the raid took place inside Ocean Seafood Depot in Newark, New Jersey. Get your pad and pencil. Write this number down, 609-984-5828, 609-984-5828. That is the phone number for New Jersey State Attorney General Matthew Platkin, 609-984-5828. I called and left a message. Do the same. Call 609-984-5828. Call the office of New Jersey State Attorney General Matthew J. Platkin and ask why he didn't join those 11 other state attorneys general who warned that they will sue the Trump administration if ICE conducts raids in sanctuary cities like Newark, New Jersey. Ask if the New Jersey State Attorney General is planning to take ICE to court for conducting warrantless raids in the city of Newark. Now, the New York State Attorney General, Matthew Platkin, did sign on to a memo challenging the executive order eliminating birthright citizenship. He did sign on to that memo. Call 609-984-5828 and demand politely to know why New Jersey State Attorney General Matthew J. Platkin did not sign on to the memo that 11 other state attorneys general signed, threatening to sue Donald Trump if ICE conducts raids in sanctuary cities. These were warrantless raids. Warrantless raids in Newark, New Jersey. A veteran, a United States veteran, detained. Congressman Adrian Espaille. I should know this because he's been on my show. Congressman Adrian Espaille is chairman of the House Hispanic Caucus. He's been on my show, and I apologize. He warned these ICE raids, quote, will show up at our dinner table. The congressman said, should these ICE raids continue, it will be inflation on steroids, unquote. 70% of American farm workers in the United States are foreign-born. Teresa Katsrilos and Ted Genoways, writing for Politico this morning, crunched the numbers on America's food chain. And quite simply, Americans would starve if it weren't for undocumented Americans. Half the people working in American slaughterhouses are foreign-born. 70% of American farm workers, foreign-born. 50% of the people working in our slaughterhouses, foreign-born. Some have papers, some don't. They go on to write in Politico that 1/4 of all the drivers who deliver food to supermarkets from farms and slaughterhouses are foreign-born. Without these 14 million undocumented Americans, we would starve to death. ICE confirmed they made 538 arrests yesterday, with 373 detained. So, how bad is this? Well, it's horrible. It's not as bad as Trump's first week in office back in 2017. But 530 arrests and 373 undocumented Americans and American citizens detained, that's a lot in one day. ICE averaged 339 arrests per day during the entirety of Trump's first administration. ICE averaged, where am I here? Why am I not? What happened? Sorry. ICE averaged 292 arrests per day during the entire Biden administration. Hang on for 1 second. Okay. Again, Newark's mayor signed an executive order on June 19th, 2017, the first couple of months of the Trump administration back then. He declared his city, Newark, New Jersey, is a sanctuary for migrants. Call the New Jersey Attorney General's office at 609-984-5828. Be polite and demand to know if he's planning to sue ICE for conducting warrantless raids in Newark, New Jersey. They arrested a United States citizen, a veteran. Is the New Jersey Attorney General going to sue ICE. New Jersey Senator Cory Booker is the former mayor of Newark. Along with Jersey Senator Andy Kim, he lodged an official complaint with the Department of Homeland Security over these Newark raids. The number for the Capitol switchboard is 202-224-3121. Give a call to Senator Andy Kim and Cory Booker of New Jersey and thank them. Thank them and let them know you're outraged that ICE is conducting warrantless raids in Newark, New Jersey. 202-224-3121. That's the Capitol switchboard in Washington, D.C. Ask to speak to your congressperson and your senator and demand that they speak out against ICE conducting warrantless raids in Newark, New Jersey. Newark City Council President LaMonica McIver was elected to Congress in November. She said of these warrantless raids, quote, already Trump's attacks on immigrant communities are hitting home, and we will not back down. We will always fight for the dignity and rights of everyone in our district and across the country. You can fight for the dignity and rights of everyone in our country by calling 202-224-3121. That's the Capitol switchboard. Call the office of Congresswoman LaMonica McIver and tell her, thank you, but you're upset that ICE is conducting warrantless raids in Newark, and we want you not just to speak out, but to do something about this. She's a good person. Congressman Bob Menendez also represents parts of Newark. After the warrantless raids, he said, quote, there is no limit to their cruelty and what they seek to do to us. Call him. It's good that they're speaking out. What is he going to do about ICE? Is he going to call for abolishing ICE? No, nobody's going to have the courage to speak the real truth that ICE should be abolished. But warrantless raids rounding up American citizens in Newark, a veteran, call your congressperson and your senator. Call Congressman Bob Menendez of New Jersey. His father, former New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez Sr., is scheduled for sentencing next week. Menendez was found guilty last year of accepting cash, gold, and a Mercedes in exchange for securing military aid for Egypt. You know, these people come really cheap. I'm going to crunch some numbers later on. It's so easy to get these people to do things for you. It's just like a used Mercedes, some gold bullion, and some cash, and they will do whatever you want for them. Federal prosecutors are asking that Senator Menendez be given 15 years in prison. Manhattan federal judge Sidney Stein yesterday rejected former Senator Menendez's motion for a new trial. His sentencing is next week. This is the mop-up for, well, I'm going to say January 25th, 2024, because that's when most people will be hearing this. We're taping it or doing it live for some earlier Friday night, and I don't know the disposition of the Hegseth confirmation vote. I will check on that at the end of the show. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed. It's harder to find me these days because of what's going on, so please subscribe to my channel, my newsletter, hit the notifications bell so you'll know when I'm about to go live or I have a new episode. Thank you for listening. Axios is reporting that Senate Majority Leader John Thune is riding high after passage of the Laken Riley Act in the Senate. It now heads to Trump's desk for a signature. This is their first legislative victory, the Laken Riley Act, which gives new power to ICE, allowing ICE to detain and then deport undocumented Americans just for being arrested. There's no due process. Not for being charged with a crime, not for being convicted of a crime, arrested. And it's going to pump billions of dollars into the private prison industry, which Donald Trump on Monday signed an executive order saying we're no longer going to phase out the private prison industry. Biden had signed an executive order phasing out the use of for-profit private detention centers. Donald Trump signed an executive order saying, no, we're going to send billions of dollars to some of my biggest contributors, CoreCivic, and I think it's Geo West. Unbelievable. I should mention that Democrats voted for Laken Riley. I don't know how they're going to fund it. They may claw this back in budget negotiations. We may find out because they've estimated that it's going to cost $78 billion a year to enforce the Laken Riley Act. We don't have a budget yet for 2025. So I'm hoping Chuck Schumer is being sly here, and come budget negotiations, the Laken Riley Act will remain unfunded. I should mention Cory Booker, Senator Cory Booker, Andy Kim, the new senator from New Jersey, Andy Kim, as well as New Jersey Congressman Bob Menendez and Congresswoman LaMonica McIver, all from New Jersey, where these warrantless raids took place yesterday. They all voted against Laken Riley. Next up, the Senate will be voting on the House's bill sanctioning members of the International Criminal Court for issuing an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu. Then the Senate takes up a bill passed in the House banning transgender athletes from participating in public school sports from kindergarten all the way up through college. If you're attending a public university, according to this bill, which passed in the House, you're not allowed, these public institutions are not allowed to have transgender athletes participating in school sports. Well, please pay attention to this because my head is about to explode, and it may be really fun to watch, okay? I'm going to stroke out here when I'm going to tell you something, and you're going to watch, my head will explode. During Senate testimony, the head of the NCAA estimated that of the 500,000 of the 500,000 college athletes here in the United States that he keeps track of as head of the NCAA, of the 500,000 college athletes, fewer than 10, he said, are transgender students. Out of 500,000 college athletes, fewer than 10, he said, are transgender students. When you ask lawmakers, what about high school? People who are passing these bills, they can't name a single transgender athlete competing in high school sports. I've heard it's about 3 nationwide. There are about 3 transgender athletes competing in high school sports. My head's going to explode. So this bill that passed in the House banning transgender athletes from participating in public school sports, the Senate is about to take it up. This bill cleared the House last week with a vote of 218 to 206. Get out your pad and pencil. 218 voted for this bill, which means there are 2,000 and what? 2005, more Republican House members voting against transgender athletes competing in public school sports than there are transgender athletes competing in public school sports. But climate change, they say, is the hoax. Okay, here is, it's not my, I was going to say this is my favorite story. It's not, because it's disgraceful. I made an error regarding a mistaken identity. These are the words of Congresswoman Lauren Boebert yesterday. She added, "I apologized, learned a lesson, and it won't happen again." This, after Congress idiot, woman Lauren Boebert, contacted Capitol Police yesterday to say there was a transgender woman inside the Congressional washroom. There wasn't. According to reports, Congresswoman Nancy Mace, who is personally responsible for the washroom ban, and Lauren Boebert came to believe, while they were inside the Congressional Ladies' Room, they came to believe that Congresswoman Sarah McBride, the first transgender woman ever to serve in the House of Representatives, Lauren Boebert and Nancy Mace, these two unhinged women, they somehow believed that Sarah McBride was using the Congressional Ladies' Room in direct violation of the new rule that Nancy Mace was able to get passed. But like I said, it was a case of mistaken identity. Now, who was misidentified as a transgender congresswoman? I'm going to go with Harriet Hageman from Wyoming, that Miskite who replaced Liz Cheney. I'm going to just go out on a limb here and offend everybody and say Harriet Hageman, the congresswoman from Wyoming. I would assume if they are going to mistake somebody for a transgender congresswoman, I'm going to go with Harriet Hageman. I don't care what anybody thinks. If you're offended by it, tough. Now look, this story is identical to some photoshops I did earlier this month after the washroom ban was passed. Some of you might remember this. This is, I swear to God, go back. It must have been January 5th or 6th. Watch that show. I remember these horrible photoshops where I talked about Patrol Officer Nancy Mace, drunk with power. You know, she got transgender women banned from congressional washrooms, and I said it's a slippery slope. And now she's patrolling the congressional men's rooms, trying to keep biological men out of those restrooms as well. Remember this? This is from right after. Stick with me on this. Here she is giving Lindsey Graham a ticket in the congressional restroom. She's giving Lindsey a ticket for tailgating, as well as an illegal lane change. She gave him a ticket. Lindsey was in the stall, and he said, "I have a wide stance," and it was an illegal lane change. It was all a misunderstanding. Okay, now look, I know these photoshops are annoying. I know people don't watch the show because of the photo. Most people hate the photoshops, but this is how I cope, okay? And this is what, so Lauren Boebert and Nancy Mace misidentified a congresswoman in the Congressional Washroom, ladies' room, thought it was Sarah McBride. That happened yesterday. In early January, I know I'm an a-hole, but look at this. I made this horrible Photoshop 3 weeks ago where Lauren Boebert contacts Officer Nancy Mace because she was in the stall in the Congressional ladies' room, and she heard piercing masculine grunting sounds coming from the stall next to her. And she contacts Washroom Patrol Officer Nancy Mace. Nancy Mace storms and kicks open the door, and it turned out to be Marjorie Taylor Greene making those piercing masculine grunting sounds. She was given a fix-it ticket. So that kind of happened today or yesterday. I mean, I know this is horrible Photoshop. It happened. Who was the Congresswoman who Nancy Mace and Lauren Boebert thought was a biological man? Leave a comment. And, you know, in this day and age, I don't care if people think it's offensive that I say it was Harriet Hageman of Wyoming. I no longer care. I know these psychologists who spoke to Democrats last weekend at the retreat said, don't go into the gutter with these people. I'm already in the gutter. People say to me, well, you know, you're better than that. No, I'm not. I'm not better than this. This is all I'm capable of. Because when you persecute, when transphobics persecute the transgender community this way, they not only cause suicides, they also create hate crimes. It's a form of stochastic terrorism. You get people, Nancy Mace, with these laws, is getting people killed. Inadvertently. I know she doesn't think she is, but this is what gives people enough righteous indignation to lash out at the transgender community and the LGBTQ community. You're looking, let me go wide here. You're looking at sacred ground. This is the spot in Laramie where Matthew Shepard, a gay college student studying political science at the University of Wyoming, was tied to a fence in October of 1998 and left to die for 18 hours just for being gay. It took 18 hours for his near lifeless body to be discovered by someone riding their bike. And the person who was going for their bike ride saw Matthew Shepard in a coma and at first thought it was a scarecrow that had fallen off the fence. Matthew Shepard lay in a coma for several days until he died on October 12th, 1998. His parents, Judy and Dennis Shepard, saw the reaction to his murder, the reaction from far-right extremists. They got letters and threats, and they decided not to give their son's ashes a proper burial for fear his grave would be desecrated by these people. And so for nearly 20 years, the remains of Matthew Shepard had no resting place. Until the Washington National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. offered to inter his ashes inside their church, the safety of their church. You're looking at his funeral, his burial, inside the Washington National Cathedral in Washington, D.C. That was in 2018, 20 years after his murder. Matthew Shepard's remains were finally interred inside the Washington National Cathedral in a ceremony attended by his parents and hundreds of others. This woman, Marion Budde, is the bishop at Washington National Cathedral, where the remains of Matthew Shepard now lie. And it was Bishop Marion Edgar Budde's idea to contact Matthew Shepard's parents and offer her house of worship as a safe space for Matthew Shepard's remains. This is the same bishop who on Tuesday during a national prayer service asked Donald Trump to protect the LGBTQ community and undocumented immigrants. And he called her nasty and demanded an apology. Yesterday, Bishop Marion Edgar Budde said, "People are now leaving messages wishing me dead," for asking Donald Trump to be kind to the LGBTQ community, to the children, and the undocumented Americans. She's now getting calls wishing her dead. Donald Trump yesterday ordered Dr. Anthony Fauci's security detail to stand down. Dr. Fauci is required round-the-clock protection as he and his family receive incessant death threats from crackpots accusing Fauci of, among other things, creating the COVID virus for the great big reset. Trump said he wouldn't feel bad if anything bad happens to Dr. Fauci because Trump said Dr. Fauci has enough money to pay for his own security. Mike Pompeo served in the Trump White House, first as CIA director and then as Secretary of State. On Wednesday, Trump ordered his security detail, Pompeo's security detail, to stand down. Pompeo, after leaving the Trump White House, was perceived by Trump as disloyal because Pompeo entertained the idea of running for the Republican nomination last year. Pompeo refused to endorse Trump until right before the Iowa caucuses. He loses his security detail. Trump said Pompeo's security detail was yanked because it cost millions of dollars a year to keep him safe. Why does he need security detail? There are reports that Iran wants to kill Mike Pompeo in order to avenge the assassination of General Qasem Soleimani, a wildly popular figure in Iran who was killed in Iraq back in January of 2020 by the American military. This was a killing Mike Pompeo, as Secretary of State, openly endorsed. Hence, he needs protection from Iranian assassins. Or you can stay out of people's business. I mean, that would save a lot of money in security, is, staying out of the Middle East. Trump's former national security advisor, John Bolton, lost his protection on Monday. Bolton told reporters that Trump just made it easier for Iran to kill me. So what is this about? Why is Trump doing this? Federal prosecutor Brendan Ballou was part of the team over at the Department of Justice assigned to prosecute the MAGA supporters who stormed the Capitol on January 6. He wrote in the New York Times this morning a piece entitled, quote, "I prosecuted the Capitol rioters. They have never been more dangerous." Ballew explained why Trump pardoned or commuted the sentences of all 1,500 arrested for their actions on January 6. He says it's not just to instill fear in Trump's political opponents. He says Donald Trump views the people who rioted that day as his extrajudicial enforcers. You know, the brown shirts. He writes, "There is great value to him, Trump, in having members of these groups released, doubly loyal to him now because he released them, and eager to carry out his agenda and silence his critics through violence." Prosecutor Ballew wrote, "The effect, and I believe purpose, of these pardons is to encourage vigilantes and militias loyal to the president, but unaccountable to the government." See, the militias, the people, the Oath Keepers, the Proud Boys, they're unaccountable. This is what illiberal democracies and dictatorships have known for decades. And he writes, illiberal democracies and outright dictatorships often rely on such militia groups whose organization and seriousness can range widely from the vigilantes who enforce Iran's hijab dress code to the United Self-Defense Forces of Colombia that have killed government opponents. You all knew this. You all knew this. It's just interesting hearing a federal prosecutor issue the warning. On Monday, the head of the Oath Keepers, Stuart Rhodes, serving an 18-year sentence for seditious conspiracy, had his sentence commuted by Donald Trump and was released from prison. On Wednesday, he showed up inside the Capitol, talking to reporters and trying to meet with Republican lawmakers. On Friday, U.S. District Judge Amit Mehta, who presided over Rhodes' trial, issued a ban preventing Stuart Rhodes, founder of the Oath Keepers, from entering the United States Capitol or the surrounding grounds without prior court approval. So what's going on here? Because he's a free man. Well, on Monday, again, Trump commuted the sentences for that were given to the head of the Oath Keepers and the head of the Proud Boys and their cohorts. They were all doing time for seditious conspiracy. Their sentences were commuted. Everyone else, so it's, do the math, 1,500 minus about 6 who were convicted for seditious conspiracy, 1,994 were pardoned. 6 had their sentences commuted. Trump said if you were serving time for seditious conspiracy, sedition, you're only getting your sentence commuted. Getting your sentence commuted is different from a pardon. A pardon wipes the slate clean, but getting their sentences commuted means those convictions for seditious conspiracy still stand. And even though these 6 men are now free, they are still, like Donald Trump, convicted felons subject to court orders like preventing them from ever entering the U.S. Capitol again. Proud Boys chief Enrique Tarrio, who was sentenced, I believe, to 21 years for seditious conspiracy. He's out, sentence commuted, not pardoned. He called into the Alex Jones show to say it's time for retribution. He was talking about getting the prosecutors arrested. He wasn't threatening them physically. I want to be careful here because it's easy to get people upset. And I see a lot of headlines. Proud Boy Chief calls for retribution. No, he called for he said, I want retribution. I want the judges and the prosecutors arrested and prosecuted. That's different than threatening physical violence, which he's capable of, but he didn't threaten physical violence. And we really need to be careful here. It's easy to not to add that and get people more scared than they need to be. Well, Enrique Tarrio told Alex Jones, I'm still in charge of the Proud Boys. Is he? It'll be interesting to see how much influence Enrique Tarrio still has over the Proud Boys, especially after Reuters reported back in 2021 that Enrique Tarrio, as leader of the Proud Boys, was also a voluminous police informer for years, reportedly in constant communication with the FBI and was in constant communication with Washington, D.C. police intelligence officers hours before January 6th. Big police informer. He was telling them everything. But one of the problems, and there's another lawsuit going on, I don't think Trump can pardon this Washington, D.C. intelligence officer. There is a trial right now where a Washington, D.C. police intelligence officer who was in constant contact with Enrique Tarrio, head of the Proud Boys, he's being accused of cooperating with the Proud Boys. This is one of the problems. In Europe, in America, certainly we saw it in Latin America, South America, the police, not all, but they have a special place in their hearts for extrajudicial, far-right militia. Georgia Congressman Barry Loudermilk, that's his name, Barry Loudermilk, Republican. He was picked by Speaker Mike Johnson this week to head a new January 6th committee to look into what really happened. This is Trump's response to the real January 6th committee that was set up by Nancy Pelosi when she became Speaker. Well, she already was Speaker, but in the 118th Congress, and after January 6, 2021, she set up the January 6th committee, which was supposed to be bipartisan, but then Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy wouldn't participate. So the only Republicans who joined were Kinzinger and Liz Cheney. They're no longer members of Congress. So now they're trying to rewrite history. This is the Republicans trying to rewrite what happened on January 6th. Loudermilk issued a report on January 3rd as the new Congress was being sworn in. It was a report on his efforts to expose the January 6th committee. And in this report, he accused Cassidy Hutchinson of conflicting testimony. He says in his report, you cannot trust Cassidy Hutchinson because she gave two separate versions of what happened, right? Well, most of my listeners know who Cassidy Hutchinson is. Most of you have read her book or seen her interviews, and most of you have read Liz Cheney's book, which is a masterpiece. And so is Cassidy Hutchinson's. I really recommend you read these two books. Okay, so Barry Loudermilk in his report attacking the January 6th committee, says whatever Cassidy Hutchinson says can't be trusted because she gave conflicting testimony. Well, you might remember Cassidy Hutchinson worked in the White House for Mark Meadows. He was Trump's chief of staff, currently on trial in Georgia and Arizona. He was Trump's chief of staff, and Cassidy Hutchinson was basically his assistant, worked very closely with Mark Meadows. And in early 2022, she testified before the January 6th committee, and she was accompanied by a lawyer paid for by Trump's Political Action Committee. She's in her early 20s, no money. It's terrifying to be called before a congressional hearing. You need a lawyer. They're not free. And Trump says, hey, here, I'll pay for your lawyer. And she testified. A few months later, she contacted Liz Cheney. I don't know, maybe it was a couple of weeks later. She contacts Liz Cheney, who was sitting on the January 6th committee, and Cassidy Hutchinson said to Liz Cheney, without her Trump-provided lawyer present, she said, I want to testify again because I feel I had not been forthcoming with you the first time. Hutchinson told Liz Cheney that the lawyer, her lawyer who was provided by Trump, Cassidy Hutchinson said that lawyer advised her during her testimony to say her memory was faulty. And so she withheld key testimony. Hutchinson said she told Liz Cheney, I want to come back without that attorney, without the attorney who was provided and paid for by Trump. I want to tell you the truth. And she came back and told the truth. Loudermilk, in his report on the January 6th committee, is targeting Cassidy Hutchinson as an unreliable witness because he said she gave conflicting testimony. Again, this was a girl in her early 20s who could not afford an attorney. An attorney was provided to her by Trump. She didn't give conflicting testimony. She gave one version of events, said, I feel guilty, and then she gave the actual version of the events. That is not conflicting testimony. There's the first testimony where she follows the legal advice from a lawyer provided by Donald Trump, and then there's the testimony that she offers up apologizing for not telling the whole truth. Cassidy Hutchinson risked it all. After the testimony, she contacted Liz Cheney and said, after her first testimony, she said, I need to tell you the truth. That is not conflicting testimony. That's doing the right thing. That is, I believe, Mike Johnson would call it second chances and redemption. After the January 6th pardons, the lying Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, said those pardons are okay because I believe as a Christian in redemption and second chances, unless you're Cassidy Hutchinson. In Loudermilk's report, he accuses Liz Cheney somehow of witness tampering. Why? Because Cassidy Hutchinson, the witness, contacted Liz Cheney after her testimony. And Liz Cheney said, you know, Cassidy, I want your testimony, but you really do need legal advice. I will help you find a lawyer Maybe we can find somebody willing to work pro bono. And Barry Loudermilk, in his report, doesn't say that. He just says witness tampering and asks why wasn't her first lawyer present for these conversations with Liz Cheney. Why? Because Cassidy Hutchinson didn't want him anymore. So, after that report was issued, I think it was on January 3rd, where he's trying to poke holes in the January 6th committee, suggesting that Liz Cheney should be prosecuted. Barry Loudermilk, is now going to be chairing his own January 6th committee to bring down Liz Cheney and Cassidy Hutchinson and rewrite January 6th, propping up Donald Trump. They are going to target, the idea of this new committee is to get Liz Cheney and Cassidy Hutchinson, who I think she's not even 25. Cassidy Hutchinson, Mark Meadows, whatever her title was, she worked closely with Mark Meadows. In her second round and third round of testimony, Cassidy Hutchinson testified that Donald Trump sat and did nothing while his MAGA morons stormed the Capitol. She testified that members of Donald Trump's own administration were walking in to the Oval Office, walking into Mark Meadows' office. He was getting texts. Mark Meadows was getting texts from Don Jr., Sean Hannity, Laura Ingraham. Tell him to stop this. And he wouldn't do it. He wouldn't do it. And Cassidy Hutchinson testified that Mark Meadows, Donald Trump's chief of staff, sat in his office, which is right off the Oval Office, the chief of staff. And she said he was just looking at his phone, and she said somebody asked him, aren't you going to speak to Trump to get him to call off his mob? And Mark Meadows just said he really believes Mike Pence deserves to be hanged for not blocking the certification for Joe Biden. That's what Cassidy Hutchinson testified. That's in her book. That the Capitol was being stormed. Everybody was trying to get to Trump, getting on the phone with Mark Meadows, get him to stop this. And Mark Meadows said, I spoke to him. He really thinks Mike Pence deserves to be hanged for certifying the election for Joe Biden. So it is Georgia Republican Barry Loudermilk's mission with this new committee, this new January 6th committee, destroy Liz Cheney and destroy Cassidy Hutchinson. But there's a little problem for Barry Loudermilk. And this gives me faith. This is why I'm not, I'm alarmed, but I'm not scared. Because this is who these people are. There's a little problem with the committee and the Republican Party. The Washington Post reporting yesterday that the new January 6th committee, under the leadership of Republican Barry Loudermilk, is now afraid to subpoena Cassidy Hutchinson, especially her records, the evidence that she preserved. According to the Washington Post, Speaker Mike Johnson has been told by one of his top aides It would be an unmitigated disaster for the new January 6th committee to issue a subpoena ordering Cassidy Hutchinson to turn over her electronic records. Why? Why do you think? Because Cassidy Hutchinson's records, according to the Washington Post, contain multiple sexually tinged texts from multiple GOP congressmen. In her book, she talks about Rudy Giuliani basically sexually assaulting her on January 6th, groping her at least, while John Eastman, the other Trump lawyer, leered salaciously. In her book, she talks about how Matt Gaetz, on a Republican retreat, Hegseth was confirmed. Thank you. Hegseth was confirmed. Thank you so much. Well, I'll go over that in a second. No surprise. Thank you for this information. And you're an a-hole? That I knew. In her book, she talks about how Matt Gaetz, there was Kevin McCarthy who had to save Cassidy Hutchinson from Matt Gaetz. So they can't get her electronic records. They're going to try to destroy Cassidy Hutchinson. They're going to end up destroying themselves. Well, this is the mop-up for January, let's say 25th, because that's when most of you will be hearing this. And we're just getting confirmation that Pete Hegseth has been confirmed. We have confirmed that Pete Hegseth. So I guess he's going to quit drinking. He said he'll quit drinking if he's confirmed. And as somebody who has quit drinking, it's just that easy to quit drinking. They asked him, are you going to quit drinking? He said, if I'm confirmed, I will quit. And everybody knows that day drinkers, morning drinkers, can just quit when they get a new job as, defense secretary, which is not a high-pressure job. It's not like he's going to need to have a drink. It's going to be a cakewalk. It's going to be easy for him. I think Joni Ernst will probably end up being defense secretary. I think we'll see. I've given up predicting what's going on. So this is the mop-up for January 20, let's say the 25th, 2025. Please, you know the drill. Tie your shoelaces, brush your teeth, and don't wash your socks and underwear in my kitchen sink when you're staying here. No, that's not it. Hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, hit the notifications bell, and it's harder to find me these days. I'm on Blue Sky. People say they can't find me on Blue Sky. I don't know. Look up the mop-up on Blue Sky, perhaps. Subscribe to my newsletter. And I read all your comments. And if I got anything wrong, please correct me. And I know anyway, I know one of the corrections I'm going to get, and your correction is going to be wrong. Okay? It's about the New Jersey State Attorney General. He signed a letter to challenge Trump's executive order on birthright citizenship. He did not join 11 other state attorneys general in threatening to sue Trump if ICE conducts raids in sanctuary cities. And I know people are going to correct me. They're going to confuse the two memos. But Anyway, where am I? Donald Trump issued an executive order declassifying all the documents pertaining to the assassinations of President Kennedy, Bobby Kennedy, and Dr. Martin Luther King. Well, now we can find out if Ted Cruz's father killed Jack Kennedy. In 2016, Donald Trump said Ted Cruz's wife was ugly. And he also said that Ted Cruz's father was in on the Kennedy assassination. And Ted Cruz, a loyal supplicant, nevertheless. We found out if his wife is ugly, and now we're going to get to find out if his dad killed Kennedy. This is what President Trump said in 2016. Cruz's father was with Lee Harvey Oswald prior to Oswald's being, shot. I mean, the whole thing is ridiculous. I mean, what was he doing? What was he doing with Lee Harvey Oswald shortly before the death, before the shooting? Well, I hope those records are released. We can get to the bottom of whether or not Rafael Cruz, Ted Cruz's father, killed Kennedy. We found out whether or not Heidi Cruz was ugly, but we should find out whether his father killed Kennedy. Maybe Trump would like to release Jeffrey Epstein's unredacted flight logs while you're at it. Well, big World Economic Forum was held this week in Davos, Switzerland. All your favorite people were there, and Trump addressed that group via teleconference. He addressed them via teleconference on the very same day he issued an executive order saying federal employees are no longer allowed to work remotely. In his speech, Trump accused banks of discriminating against conservatives. Yes, because we all know banks are such hotbeds for liberal activism. I mean, every time I go to the bank for an auto loan, I look around and I think, what's with this? What's with all these Antifa ruffians working here? So I hope the banks stop discriminating against conservatives. Melania Trump wrote in her most recent book that she was the victim of bias against conservatives after she and her son found themselves unable to open up checking accounts right after January 6th. Well, that's not conservative bias. A lot of banks don't do business with terrorists. That's the law. You're married to a terrorist. After January 6th, he was a terrorist. Plus, banks have a bias against people who falsify business records over and over again to secure bank loans totaling hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. You know, when you're married or when you're the son of someone who defrauds banks, sometimes it's hard to get a checking account. In his speech, Trump warned countries, he said, any countries that don't buy American products will be subjected to tariffs. Trump then said, from now on, America is going to demand respect from other countries. And that's wise. You know, as I've gotten older, I've learned the way to earn respect from others is by demanding it. You know who demanded respect? Fredo in Godfather 2. Remember, he demanded respect from Michael because Fredo was his older brother and got passed over, and that wasn't the way he wanted it. I'm your older brother, and I want respect. He demanded respect. And after Fredo demanded respect, you know what he got? Respect. Right between the eyes. In his speech, Trump said Canada can avoid tariffs by becoming our 51st state. He accused Canada of treating America very badly. Canada? The country that took in Syrian refugees when we refused? That Canada? Treating America very badly? We're not their first peoples. They treat their indigenous people very badly, but we're not their first people. When Trump continued in his speech, he blamed OPEC and the Federal Reserve for rampant inflation, which, unfortunately for Donald Trump, isn't so rampant. And gas prices are, $3 and some change a gallon. Now, when Trump left office, a gallon of gas was about $2.50, $2.60. But the economy had been shut down. So gas was cheap. There was no demand for gasoline. Trump said in his speech that he's going to tell Jerome Powell, the head of the Federal Reserve, to lower interest rates because they're way too high. Trump said, I understand interest rates. He literally said this. He said, I understand interest rates better than anyone, and they're too high. He literally said, I know more about interest rates than the chairman of the Federal Reserve. He's right. Trump knows a lot more than anybody else. He knows more about interest rates, and he knows more about tariffs than Jerome Powell, the chairman of the Federal Reserve. Jerome Powell, chairman of the Federal Reserve, is so stupid, he thinks tariffs are paid by American consumers. What an idiot. Trump then said he's ordering OPEC to lower the price of oil. They don't set the price, you effing moron. They either open up the spigot or they close the spigot, and it's whatever you get on the open market and whatever the demands are. If there's no demand for oil, the price of oil goes down. OPEC doesn't raise and lower prices. They determine the supply, but not the demand. So a barrel of crude oil right now, I just bought a barrel for $73. New Haven Crude. It's made specially for me. It's a signature brand. It's a home. It's like a private brewery. So it's $73 a barrel. It was about $55 a barrel when Trump left office. But that was when COVID was going on. The world economy had been shut down. Before the world economy got shut down by COVID, oil was $66 a barrel. Right now it's $73 a barrel. So with inflation, the price of oil, to save the planet, oil should be $500 a barrel. It should be unaffordable. But before COVID, the price of oil was, a barrel was like, $8 cheaper? Not much. And a gallon of gas was $2.50 before COVID, and now it's $3 and some change. The point I'm making is Donald Trump is stupid. He is stupid. You can't order OPEC to lower prices. They don't set the price for oil. The market, ordering OPEC to lower the price of oil is tantamount to saying to Tim Cook, lower the price of Apple stock. It's too expensive. He's an idiot. And oil prices can't go any lower because oil companies make less money when they charge less. And they didn't install Donald Trump as president to make less money. What they want is more demand for oil and OPEC to tighten the spigot. More profits, right? The Guardian reporting today that oil companies spent $445 million on the 2024 election here in America. It's almost, it's a little more than what Elon Musk spent. Nearly 100 million. Now imagine that. So they spent $445 million to promote politicians who call climate change a hoax. Elon Musk spent $300 million to promote Donald Trump, who calls climate change a hoax. Your fortune comes from Tesla, which is alternative energy. Wouldn't it be in your best interest as the wealthiest man in the world to outspend the oil companies and get Republicans and Democrats elected who say man-made climate change is real, we need to keep the oil in the ground, and that means more Teslas being sold? Doesn't that make financial sense? That's how you become a trillionaire, Elon Musk. You buy politicians to say, keep the fossil fuels in the ground. I mean, the oil companies spent $445 million last year. Elon Musk spent $300 million. I mean, that is literally to buy politicians who will keep oil in the ground, Elon. That will pay you 10 times more in Tesla profits. So where did the oil company money go? Nearly $100 million was spent donating to Donald Trump's campaign. He told them to give him $1 billion last year. This was in the Washington Post. He had a meeting of the top oil executives at Mar-a-Lago, and according to the Washington Post, he said, you guys need to give my campaign $1 billion. He said it will be the best investment you ever made. They gave him $100 million. Elon Musk personally gave him $300 million. The smartest thing Elon Musk could do right now is say, hey, climate change is real. Keep the oil in the ground. Everybody should be driving a Tesla. There's something wrong with these people. It's not just stupid. There's something else going on that clouds their reality. Oh, racism. The disease of racism, misogyny, transphobia. They can't think straight. The oil companies spent $25 million on House and Senate races. Look how cheap these Republican politicians, for $25 million, they're willing to destroy the planet. They spent $250 million lobbying Congress. Well, that's a little more money, but and what does that mean? What is it? $250 million lobbying Congress. How do you spend $250 million lobbying Congress? Well, what you do is that money goes to lobbying firms populated by former senators and members of Congress who did favors for the oil companies. So after you leave Congress, after you leave the Senate, you get a job as a lobbyist and you get paid $1 million a year. And that money comes from the oil companies. It's the bribe that you get after you do their bidding. And they also spent $80 million on advertising to make big oil's case to the American people. You know how oil creates jobs. It does. Oil creates jobs. Look at all those firefighters in Los Angeles. Thanks to oil, thanks to big oil, there are twice as many firefighters working today in California than there were 5 years ago. Gavin Newsom, the California governor, doubled the budget for firefighters because of big oil. So big oil is a job creator. Look, again, Trump's an idiot. He's just stupid. Oil companies are not going to lower their prices. They can't. They don't want to lower their prices. And ordering OPEC to lower prices, like I said, is tantamount to telling Jeff Bezos to lower the price of Amazon stock. It's the open market. You can't dictate the price. What the oil companies want is to drill less so they can charge more. But Trump, in his infinite wisdom, insisted in that speech before Davos that lowering the price of oil would defeat Russia in Ukraine. He smokes dope. This is what Trump said. He said, because so much of Russia's economy depends on selling oil, if OPEC were to flood the market with cheap oil, he didn't say that. He just said if OPEC lowered the prices of oil. He doesn't understand that OPEC controls prices by turning on and off the spigot. But he said if OPEC lowers the price of oil, Russia's economy wouldn't be able to afford the war because so much of their economy is propped up by oil sales. He then said oil-producing countries are partly responsible for the war in Ukraine lasting 3 years. He said if you had just lowered the price of oil, Russia couldn't afford the war. The Associated Press reporting the Kremlin responded to Trump's claim about Russia needing oil prices to stay high to fund the war in Ukraine. They said Putin doesn't care what the price of oil is. This is a war about our security. In an interview with Sean Hannity on Wednesday, Trump said Zelensky shouldn't have fought back after Russia invaded. He said Ukraine can't beat Russia, and that had I been president instead of Biden, Zelensky wouldn't have fought back because he would have known that I, Donald Trump, would have made a deal to end the fighting. You know, the same way he made a deal to end the fighting in Afghanistan. By the time Joe Biden took office, Donald Trump ended the war in Afghanistan. Wait, that will be in our Florida and Texas textbooks in 3 years. That Trump ended the war in Afghanistan. The Washington, excuse me, drinking my Uncle Scam from my Uncle Scam mug, which you can buy over at shopdavidfeldman.com. The Washington Post reports that Donald Trump wants to scrub the Pentagon's Civilian Protection Center of Excellence. What is the Pentagon Civilian Protection Center of Excellence? It's let's stop killing innocents is what it is. The Civilian Protection Center of Excellence. It's an advisory board made up of about 100 Pentagon officials. It was set up by Joe Biden in 2023 to lower civilian casualties on the battlefield. There's a problem with 21st century warfare. More civilians are dying than soldiers. It's a little problem we've got where we're killing more civilians than we are soldiers. The Post reports Pete Hegseth, who was just confirmed as our new defense secretary, he complained during testimony that thanks to the Pentagon Civilian Protection Center of Excellence, soldiers are fighting lawyers just as much as bad guys. But a senior defense official told the Washington Post that this program doesn't prevent soldiers from taking the gloves off. He told the Post that with this program in place, now when you put the gloves on, you'll hit what you want to hit and not what you don't. Shouldn't it be when you take the gloves off, you'll hit what you want to hit? You take the gloves off to hit harder, right? Am I having an LSD flashback? A senior defense official defended this program to protect civilians by saying it doesn't prevent soldiers from taking the gloves off. Okay, so taking the gloves off means when you punch, it's going to be harder. He said, with that program in place, now when you put the gloves on, you'll hit what you want to hit and not what you don't. Wow. That's, I'm surprised. Usually Pentagon officials speak so clearly. The Associated Press reports that our new defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, paid the woman who accused him of raping her $50,000 to remain quiet. Well, who voted no? I'm going to assume Alaska Republican Senator Lisa Murkowski. She said before the vote that she was a no on Hegseth's nomination. All it took was 3 Republican senators to vote no, and that would sink him. So I'd be curious, did Lisa Murkowski vote for him? Susan Collins of Maine said she was also a no on Hegseth. Did she vote for him? Collins expressed concern over Hegseth's inability to manage such a large agency as the Pentagon, considering his mismanagement of 2 nonprofits that basically went broke. She also said she's unconvinced that Hegseth supports women serving in the military. Well, The Guardian reporting that our new defense secretary, Pete Hegseth, his belief in what is called Christian Reconstructionism has led him to support sphere sovereignty. What is sphere sovereignty? It is a belief that biblical law in all cases supersede civil law. He's a theocrat. He's for a theocracy. That's what it means. Sphere sovereignty, according to The Guardian, calls for strict adherence to Old Testament law, including the death penalty for homosexuality. Where do you come up with that? All the books in the Old Testament, all the books in the New Testament. Leviticus 20:13, if a man lies with a male as with a woman, both of them have committed an abomination, they shall surely be put to death. Their blood is upon them. That one law from Leviticus built the whole hatred for gay people off that. But they're Christians quoting Leviticus, which is the Old Testament. Hegseth's kids, according to The Guardian, are getting what is called a classical Christian education. This is a thing, right? And what is a classical Christian education? It's where children are taught women must be subservient to men. This is the mop-up for January 25th, 2025. I'm David Feldman in New York. The former Texas Congressman, John Ratcliffe, has been confirmed to be our new CIA chief. He was sworn in on Wednesday. The vote was 74-5. Tulsi Gabbard's nomination hearings for Director of National Intelligence are scheduled for January 30th. This is going to be a problem. Indiana Republican Todd Young, moderate, sits on the Senate Intelligence Committee, says he's not sure yet about her. Remember, all it takes is 3 Republicans to vote no. Andrew Puzder has been nominated for ambassador to the EU. Puzder is the former CEO of the fast food corporation Hardee's. You might remember Trump withdrew Puzder's nomination for labor secretary back in 2017 when his wife's interview with Oprah surfaced, where she accused him of domestic abuse. She later retracted it. Domestic abuse. Well, now he's going to Europe, so it will no longer be domestic. The Justice Department suspended the Attorney General's Honors Program. This had been set up decades ago to fast-track graduates from elite law schools into government, especially working for the Justice Department. This is a way to get Harvard Law, Stanford Law, Yale Law graduates inside the government quickly. And the Justice Department has discontinued this practice. How are we going to survive without more Harvard, Stanford, and Yale Law School douchebags? It's over. We can't survive without these original thinkers. They're such original thinkers. Tennessee Congressman Andy Ogles introduced legislation that would allow Trump to serve a 3rd term. Of course, that would require a constitutional amendment or a Supreme Court like the one we have now. Let me show you. This is Andy Ogles' Christmas card. And that's what his kids actually look like. I thought of hiding their faces because this is how they were born. But this is what he sent a Christmas card out. Everybody's holding military-style assault weapons. This is Lauren Boebert. She sent out, this is who you want, holding rifle. The family that shoots together ends up shooting each other together. By the way, Andy Ogles, where am I? Did I lose it? Yeah, I lost it. Sorry. Oh, the FBI confiscated his phone back in August because there's the issue of several $100,000 in illegal campaign contributions, and that needs looking into. Maybe the reason he introduced the legislation to make Mein Führer get another. Why don't you just cancel the next election, Andy? Why don't you do that? Caroline Leavitt, this is from Notice. Caroline Leavitt is Trump's press secretary. According to Notice, she owes donors to her failed congressional campaign $300,000. She's, I think, 27. She ran for Congress when she was 24. In New Hampshire, she lost, and she had to do her financial disclosures to work inside the White House, and the Federal Election Commission dinged her for accepting illegal campaign donations. $300,000 in illegal campaign donations. Bill McGinley has quit as chief counsel for Elon Musk's Department of Government Efficiency. How efficient? I mean, that is efficiency. It's not even a week old already. the chief counsel quit. And Vivek Ramaswamy quit before the department was even set up. Vivek quit over the weekend, before Trump was even. That's government efficiency. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. This has been the mop-up for January 25th, 2025. We now know that Pete Hegseth, there are no good Republicans left. They're gone. They're gone. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room for keeping the conversation civil. Please leave a comment. Correct me if I got anything wrong. Please subscribe to my channel, my newsletter, do the notifications, and most importantly, and I mean this, don't wash your socks and underwear in my kitchen sink. When you come to stay with me here in New York City, you're saving at least $200 on a halfway decent hotel room. So buy new socks and underwear every day. Don't come home after a long day riding the subways, doing God knows what, and then stand in my kitchen over the sink where I wash my vegetables, where my children play, and in my sink, my kitchen sink, and you soak your filthy socks and underwear in my kitchen sink. Do not do that. Goodbye. No show tomorrow. Thank you for finding me. Bye. Thank you.